So I'm Ji-Yeun. I work at the OECD Development Center. The Development Center is part of the OECD, but maybe you may not be so familiar. We have a specific mandate to work on developing countries. So obviously we are sharing knowledge between OECD reviews, but we are specialized in developing countries. So our work stream includes rural development, but in particular we've been addressing this issue from the labor lens, especially on youth employment, and particularly rural youth, because they're the most vulnerable groups. And so I will be presenting today the findings from a study we recently did on opportunities in food systems, and specifically local food systems. We have studied 5 African countries in depth, including Namibia. And so I'll be sharing some of the findings from this study, and I'll also end with a few lessons from OECD rural policy experiments. Can you see the screen? Okay, so why have we focused on food system? And as previous speakers have mentioned the opportunities in value chain development, agri-food sector, and so I'm going to just dive right in. Is there opportunity in this sector? And I want to emphasize the word local here. The main rationale for the study is, as we have already discussed, is that there's a high proportion of youth in Africa, and the majority of them still live in rural areas. And we also focus on rural youth and opportunities for rural youth because they're the most vulnerable to take up poor quality jobs, and also most of them are still in agriculture, but they don't want to continue to farm like their parents. So they're also starting to move out to urban areas for not necessarily better opportunities. However, we firmly believe that there are opportunities in rural areas, and our premise is that there's a growing population, urbanization, and also rising income of the middle class within the continent, within the countries. That is increasing the demand for more diverse and value-added agriculture and food products. And such rise in food demand could boost job creation in the food economy, but it needs to be there needs to be an investment in local food systems to meet the domestic demand. The challenge today, however, is that the current food systems in Africa do not meet the sustainability challenges. So first of all, we said it several times this morning, farmers are not able to make decent living from agriculture, so income of smallholder farmers especially. The second, there is the rise in food demand is currently being met by food imports. And third, many countries are sort of pushing for export-led growth strategies, and but the agriculture sector in Africa, and I'm grossly generalizing, but is mostly specialized in cash crops and commodities for global trade, which has low value added. And then fourth, so while many developing countries are looking at ways to upgrade in the global value chains, we know that upgrading participation in agri-food global value chain through higher value added activities is extremely difficult And I'll show you a slide on this afterwards. And last but not least, there are growing concerns that the current conventional agriculture models or farming techniques are environmentally unsustainable. But this is true for both developed countries and developing countries. So just a quick slide to show you about the global value chain and where the value is captured. Basically, if we continue to specialize in cash crops and commodities to boost export-led growth, countries are trapped in sort of low value added exports. And here you see that it's a global study that is estimating the gains from linking in global value chains in terms of net value added. And we see that basically OECD countries capture 67% of the global value added created under global value chains. 25% is newly industrialized countries and BRICS, and only 8% is shared among all other developing countries and least developed countries. So in light of these challenges, the study we carried out tried to understand how we can stimulate local food systems. So that's basically the agro-food value chain, agro-food industry for domestic consumption. And we had some household level data. So we first looked at the share of food economy workers, what is their profile, and we also did a forecast for 2030 on potential job creation in those different segments. Here I'll just say for clarity, the food economy, you can call it food economy, food system, agro-food value chain, we differentiated in 4 segments. So the agriculture production part, which is farming, then the food processing, which is starting the downstream segment of the value chain, food marketing, and then we have a 4th segment called food away from home, which is basically food services related activities like restaurants. And the countries that we looked at are South Africa, Namibia, Zambia, Tanzania, and Uganda. And what we see is that for low and lower middle income countries, food economy jobs take up 50 to 90% of total employment. In Namibia, and in South Africa, it's smaller, but it's still significant. 24% of total employment are in the food economy. Now we then looked at the distribution of jobs within the different segments of the food economy, and for both youth and adults. The employment, agriculture absorbs a majority of the employment, and as the country's income level goes up, downstream segments constitute a more important share of the employment in the food economy. In Namibia, it's about half, so 50% work in agriculture, and the other 50% work in downstream activities. And the highest segment is the food marketing sector. Then we looked at the age distribution as well in the food economy, and we see that youth, a majority of youth are employed in the food economy. For Namibia, over half, so 56% of workers in the food economy are between the ages of 15 and 34. So given the importance of the food economy for, in terms of employment, we tried to do a forecast for 2030 to see where are jobs going to be created. And for this, we did a very simple simulation. We used basically urbanization rate and middle class the growth of middle class, the trends, and so consumption, and we actually had data as well for 5 other sub-Saharan African countries, or 6 other countries. So we did 11 sub-Saharan countries for 2013, and we find that for all the countries, there will be job increases in the food economy sector. And for the cumulative sub-Saharan African countries, that equals to 115 million jobs in 2030. That's 12 million additional jobs in agriculture and 8 million jobs in the downstream sector compared to 2019. And I'll just quickly go over on the details. So in agriculture, there are some increases, but mostly decreases in 2030. So in Namibia, there is a slight decrease in the number of jobs in agriculture. There is the highest increase in number of jobs in the food processing sector in Namibia. And then in the food marketing continues to have the highest share of total employment among the downstream food economy jobs, and then it will also increase. And then finally, in the food away from homes sector, we also see an increase in the number of jobs. And we did a sort of an absolute number calculation, and we can expect business as usual, no further investment in current food system, just purely on consumption and demand scenario, demand increase scenario. We can see that there will be a need for 124,000 jobs in the downstream segments. So let's say we now start investing in the local food system. We can expect, better results. What kind of local food economy models should we be promoting? We talked earlier, you and colleagues talked about the SDGs and the triple objective of economic, environmental, sustainability, and social inclusion. Can we have this for food economy? And we looked at different models, mostly in the OECD countries, to see what works, what's concretely working, and what are OECD countries also starting to promote. And there are several models of local food economies. And we categorize them as whether they're producer-led, government-led, consumer-led, or retailer business-led. And all these models promote the triple objectives. The producer-led So all models that we chose promote local development, and they value fair remuneration to farmers. So livelihood of farmers is a big condition. Then job creation, and also short supply chain, and then social cohesion amongst the stakeholders. And then environmental footprint. Not all of them achieve equally in all these dimensions, but I'll just mention the ones that are quite, common and working well are agriculture cooperatives, and I think we mentioned the Simao Undo from Korea. Simao is the basis for agriculture cooperatives as well. They promoted cooperatives through this movement, and to this day, it's very, very successful. Food co-ops, I'll talk about this last, and e-distribution platforms are also quite popular, especially during COVID. The short supply chain was very much in favor, and but it has, depending on who owns the platform and how the farmers are able to join directly or not directly, it has a different results. Then we have public procurement. This is something that the government can promote. Is anything related to contracts for local schools and hospitals, for example, can favor sort of local suppliers, and this really helps the local farmers. And then we have the certification, geographic indications, and certification, so organic or sort of premium brands. And this also works, but not for all farmers. And it also is very sort of more for export driven markets. But what I found quite interesting in these models is the food cooperatives, which seem to have scored very well on all 4 dimensions. And we have in France this, I don't want to call it supermarket because it's a co-op, but it's a supermarket, it's a multi-stakeholder food cooperative. So it's not just a cooperative of farmers, but it's a cooperative of the producers, of consumers, and of employees. And so annually they meet to decide together on what is a fair price. And this model is focused on organic products and also short supply chain products. And so they are in sort of a premium market, but it's been growing very well, and employees are also getting a better income than in other retailers. So this is an interesting model. The challenge with all these local food economy models is scaling up. They operate mostly on small scale size, and they face competition with the large food corporations who often will offer similar products at lower prices, and consumers are not that conscious of the social impact or the environmental impact, and will choose price over anything else. So this is a challenge. Then for some of the models, because the supply chain is shortened, many producers are trying to also sell directly, and we face food safety and hygiene requirements. And for some of the producers, it's a cumbersome process and difficult to get past the food safety and hygiene requirements, especially for meat. The price, so we have constantly an issue with price because of price distortions due to large subsidies in Europe. We have large farm subsidies, and so the bigger the farmer is, the bigger the subsidy. And if you're an organic small farmer, you get no subsidy. So not only there is the price distortion there, but also no consideration is taken into account in terms of the environmental externalities, so pollution, etc. So there's no incentives for organic. And then the consumer also, are not so aware mature, it's still a very minority share of the market, those who are looking for short supply chain and other products. And then finally, for not just the global food economy, but the agri-food sector in general, there is a skills mismatch and labor shortage in most OECD countries. And I just looked briefly at some of the policies that some countries like New Zealand, the Netherlands, and Ireland have tried to put in order to attract labor back into agri-food. I picked those countries because they have a large cattle farming business. And I'm not going to go into the details of this. I can share the slides, but basically the common thread in all of these policies towards labor shortage and labor mismatch in the agri-food sector is that they're bringing together the industry, so businesses in the sector, educators, and government together to try to provide a more adapted education and skills training. And the second big thing they're trying to do is really to try to change the perception of the sector on the youth. And in the Netherlands, they focus a lot on the green education and so the green practices in the agri-food sector. And they are also adapting the education curriculum accordingly, and also trying to really help the image of the sector. So this is a common problem, I think, for both developed and developing countries. So local food systems, I mean, it's not going to happen in a vacuum. We talked a lot this morning about rural policies. It's very vast, but we need to start somewhere. So what are some of the sort of the trends that have happened in OECD countries? I tried to summarize very grossly the history of rural policy in OECD countries, which has really evolved. 1950s has been a big focus on agriculture and food security, mostly following the World War II. Then 60s and 70s has been a big focus on infrastructure and also trying to host manufacturing firms. Those initiatives were heavily subsidized. And then in the 80s, there's a wave of decentralization reform, and sort of local authorities are trying to support local development through small and medium enterprises, etc. Then 1990s becomes a bit more holistic approach, rural development strategies, and today we have what we call this new rural paradigm, which really focuses on place rather than sector. So moving away from rural equals agriculture towards competitiveness of the region, and then also trying to seek investment rather than subsidies. And there were three factors that influenced sort of these rural policy making changes in OECD. And one was, as I said, the realization of other assets in rural areas, so focus on amenities. Some regions have historical sites and important natural resources. So moving away from just looking at agriculture, but also how can those assets be better valued. Then there has been pressure to reform the agriculture policy. As I mentioned, farms in OECD countries are heavily subsidized by both national but also EU and they've been, put under pressure due to also the enlargement process of the EU and also the financially unsustainable ways this farm subsidies is working. Then there are the decentralization trends in regional policy. It started with financial redistribution, and we realized that this was not enough, and that local authorities really needed to be empowered, make their own decision, not just get a redistribution of the taxes. And however, this also needed to be accompanied with capacity. So there's been many OECD rural reviews, and there is one report that kind of summarizes 11 OECD country reviews, and some of the lessons even though we have very different rural situations in OECD countries, I think some of these lessons are quite interesting for us today. The first lesson is that investing in lagging regions will have economic benefits. I think we mentioned special inequalities in the earlier presentation. Basically, if you have special inequality, it will drag down national economic growth. So we need to invest in lagging regions, and this will eventually pay off at the national level. The second lesson is that we need to create jobs through investment rather than subsidies, and which will have a sustainable impact, and also the likelihood of decreasing migration from rural to urban. The third lesson is to really understand the diversity of regions. I think we already mentioned this, but each region has its own comparative advantage, and this needs to be recognized, and also this needs to be accompanied with a multi-level governance approach across sectors, but also across between levels of government. And then the final lesson is that local governments need to be empowered and included in decision making, as they are the ones who are the best in the unique situation of their own territories. So finally, some policy implications for developing countries for local food economic development. First of all, we need to make agri-food jobs attractive by investing in rural development. We talked already a lot about investing in rural development. And there are, we need to accelerate transfer of technologies, mechanization, access to financial products for businesses in rural areas, better regulatory frameworks on food safety standards, and then, the usual infrastructure or urban linkages. And we need to address the issue of informality. Informality, I think in Namibia, is about 60% of the total employment. In agri-food sector, it is 70%. So this needs to be addressed through targeted social protection, so that young people or people who want to enter this sector have some kind of minimum social protection. We need to narrow skills gaps in the food economy through adequate training. The TVET, but also regular curriculum is outdated. And we need to teach youth more holistic food system education, including ecology, food safety, food processing, marketing, and also the use of digital technologies for business. And I think we need to reskill youth who are in agriculture, who want to move out of agriculture, to integrate the next sort of downstream activity in the value chain. And then finally, we need to support premium and local products through through better standards and regulatory mechanisms, facilitate certification schemes, support premium organic products, so that they're able to get a better price in the domestic market, and promote organic and geographic indication products. And we need to address this price distortion by maybe integrating environmental externalities in prices for all smallholders and but also for large scale farmers.